It's a pleasure to be here. I'm going to talk about the changing retail environment and its impact on the produce industry. But I hope that you might have had a chance to hear the presentation by Ed McLaughlin, because he talked about these major disruptive events that's taking place. And I'm going to talk more about this continual change that's taking place over time, as opposed to the major disruption events. I've been in the industry for about 40 years, and I have never seen so much change as I've seen in the last 5 years. It's just really been dramatic. And I thought to myself, who would have thought that the largest online retailer in the world would be Alibaba? I never heard of Alibaba till a couple of years ago. The largest taxi company is Uber. I only got an Uber app a year ago. And of course, the largest hotel chain is not Marriott, it's not Hilton, it's Airbnb. I mean, these are changes that, we just wouldn't have thought of. But you say, well, come on, Alibaba is, a online retailer. They have 118,133 available fresh fruit choices. But I think the point is today, it's a different world out there. This is the classic American image of the family at Thanksgiving. And this is the modern family. It's a different family. They eat differently. They think differently. Think about the family dinner a few years ago through Europe. I know that in many cases, this type of dinner situation is still prevalent in a lot of European countries, but it's still changing. Think about what our stores look like. What do our stores look like? What did Albert Heijn's look like a few years ago? What about today? What's changing today? I have a tremendous desire to dance right now, but you can't hear the music, but but we look at where do people buy food. We'll talk more about these, but look at this in Chicago. You walk up in a bus station with your phone, and you'd simply order the food and it appears in your house while you're waiting for a bus. Or we're going to see more supermarket vending, but we'll talk about that later. What's the cause of this? Primarily, it's the rapid changes to demographics. We can look at the consumer and we can see that in general there's more hectic work and home schedules. You see, for example, in the US, breakfast is almost non-existent anymore. 25% of Americans eat breakfast in their car. And you see ads for maybe Kellogg's cereal, and they're saying you should eat more cereal during for breakfast. Eat cereal, as if people don't already know they should. It's just they don't have the time. They can't take the time to, get the dishes, wash the dishes, have milk, all of these things available. We know we have more internet access. There's a changing demography taking place. It's very different. This increasing towards single households is something that the produce industry must consider. In the US, 27% of households are considered single-person households. However, look at this. Japan, I hope you can see this, 33, Britain 34, France 34, Sweden, 47% of households are single-person households. They want different quantities. They want to have a lot of different behavior with respect to their food. It's happening more in Europe than it is in the US, but it's still happening. And then, of course, the millennials. You know, there's no doubt about it. The population has always had these segments. You know, we had the baby boomers, we had Generation X, Generation Y, and they were all different. But what's happened is they've kind of been transitional. A little change here, a little change there. Millennials are a different story. I get to teach them, and I'm shocked. I'm shocked, for example, that my research assistant going to a store was her last choice. She went to the store sometimes, but it was her last choice. And of course, you've all seen written a lot about millennials and their behavior and what they do, etc. Certainly, they're the first generation that is pretty much completely grown up using computers and being online. But what's the effect of this? Everyone will try and sell you a meal. A lot of these companies, and Ed McLaughlin talked about a few of these, they recognize that you probably come into their store more often for food than you would for other things. So they're using it also as a reason to come into the store. If we look, I'm sorry, this is a little out of focus, but if we look at the increase in store counts, we can see the fresh format is growing like crazy. Now, I think that's good for the produce industry, to be honest with you. And we can look at the limited assortment. That is the Lidls, the Aldi's, etc. They're growing. And dollar stores, or Euro stores, or 100 yen stores, or they all have the same phenomena. They're growing. But what about traditional supermarkets? They're down. Drugstores? I've been walking around different countries in Europe, and drugstores are still pretty much not in the food industry yet. The C-stores are, of course, making a major change. If we look at some channels, we used to call them alternative channels. That is, we in the supermarket industry, we are the leaders, and these are some of these alternative channels. The alternative channels have become the traditional channels. If we take a look at, again, the mass channel, the drugstore channel, convenience stores way up. Look at the value channel, up 8.4%. And again, that's the Aldi and Lidl in the US primarily. If we look at the compound growth rate, I just want to focus on the top three. The fresh format, growing more than anyone. E-commerce, growing. Limited assortment, and dollar stores. I mean, look at where the supermarket is. Hardly growing at all. Now, the scary thing is, for many of the people in the produce business, that's absolutely their main source, their main customer. Well, it should stay their main customer because they're still big, but they've got to look at these other channels. Club stores are growing faster than the industry. This reminds me of me. I go into the club store with the expectation of spending about $100. You know what? I walk out with about $400. I mean, it's like a mystery to me how they do it to me. We're seeing pharmacies. I think this is interesting. CVS, one of the largest pharmacies in the US, look at their convenience fresh every day. Their label says Food Mart. They're not pretending that they sell food. I mean, they're actually announcing it. And if you look at the front of their stores, it says Food Mart. And, you know, for the most part, and I think, again, Ed talked about this, Ed McLaughlin, for the most part, they sold the things that are shown in this ad. But now they have refrigerated food, freezers. I had one produce distributor tell me that he sold more products to a particular convenience store than he did to supermarkets. And it's not just bananas anymore. Convenience stores have changed significantly. We're seeing in the European market, I believe we call them forecourt stores, they're really attacking the marketplace. The old convenience store has changed. You can see a lot of different formats of convenience stores. And believe me, they don't want to just sell you coffee and a hot dog. These are sophisticated food marketers that are understanding their market. And the forecourt stores, that is the ones that have the gas stations, are using that time that people spend filling their tank to send them messages. Well, you're standing there with nothing to do but to hold your gas. They're telling you this is on sale, or we have fresh roasted chickens, or in the convenience stores. Prepared foods are changing significantly. We're moving more towards the fresh foods. We're looking more towards the Grocer Ons. And I think it's important that most of these retailers are focusing primarily on the protein part of the meal, not necessarily the produce, not necessarily actually the dessert and the beverage and the things. If you go to a restaurant, where do they make their money? On selling you a $5 cup of coffee or an expensive dessert. We sometimes let people. Grocer Ons in the U.S. are becoming a huge, I shouldn't say that, they're growing rapidly, still very small. A Grocer On is the kind, I think I might have, yeah, a Grocer On is, you're not really sure, is it a restaurant that has food, or is it, a grocery store that has eating? It's almost 50-50. And many of these Grocer Ons, this one down here, the chefs go and take the food right off their floor. A chain in Philadelphia called Wegmans has an entire, you kind of walk down an aisle to get into the store with all sorts of fresh prepared foods as you walk into the store. The vision of a grocery store as totally separate from a restaurant is beginning to meld. Of course, there still will be restaurants, and of course there will be pure supermarkets, but we're going to see this, and this is the key word, fresh. We're going to see more and more emphasis on fresh, which couldn't be better news for us. Couldn't be better news for us. Kroger is opening a comfort food restaurant. They're going to have their own bistro. And of course, why Grocer Ons are a new trend, they're taking a bite out of restaurants as well as a bite out of the grocery industry. One of the things is to focus on the fastest growing format is this fresh format. We're seeing it in Europe, we're seeing it in the US. If you go in there, their main emphasis is fresh food. Do they have canned soup? Probably. But that's not why you go there. In many cases, the old model used to be you'd pick a supermarket for a whole bunch of reasons. It could be convenience, could be you think you have low prices, could be they have lots of specials and coupons, etc. And while you're there, you bought produce. In today's market, the reason why you go to Sunflower is to buy produce. And while you're there, you might pick up a can of soup or something like that. It's literally a reverse of what has been happening. You know, one of the things I I don't think people understand is the impact that these TV shows are having. We always think of and by the way, you have European home shopping, they primarily sell fitness and leisure and home products, but they sell food. Now, in the U.S., Home Shopping Network, this is the food that they sell. They have beverages, they have muffins, they have fruit and nuts, they have all these things. They don't have a lot of fresh food. Why not? They can sell crabs, they can sell steaks, they can sell virtually all of these different foods. Why isn't it? And by the way, in order to get onto this Home Shopping Network, you have to agree to sell $250,000 every 15 minutes. Yeah, it's huge. It's really huge how much you're expected to sell. And the nice thing about this, with this television, you can romance the consumer. I mean, if they're walking down the aisle and there's something there, they either buy it or they don't. But on television, he's looking right into the camera. And as he's looking at the camera, the person on the other side sees them intimately. There was I knew a guy, he went to South Philly and got this Italian guy named Nunzio. And Nunzio was advertising the spaghetti sauce. And he looked at the camera, he says, my mama, she said, Nunzio, you got to use the best of tomatoes. You got to make it just so beautiful. And people are romanced by that. He sold $1 million worth of spaghetti, some pasta sauce in 30 minutes. Everything he could make, he sold. We don't think about these kind of options. How about this? The big thing now in the U.S. are these meal kits. The major one is Blue Apron. They did $1 billion worth of business in the last 12 months. $1 billion worth of business. And if you look, what do you see in this picture? What do you see? You see virtually all fresh produce. Somebody's got to get with them and say, how can we be your produce supplier? European meal kit is the same. And again, look at what's in these kits. Meal Hero is a 2-year startup based in Belgium. Is another big meal kit. These are really taking off because remember those millennials? They're kind of a paradox because they are a little bit of foodies. They like to cook, but they don't want to do the shopping. They don't want to. And so this comes to their house. Comes to the house and has everything they need to make a meal. And you know what? Millennials are concerned about food waste. There's no food waste. Everything into the box they end up using. They feel good about themselves. They feel good that they're able to do these things. And they pay an enormous margin to be able to do that. Subscription services. We know that these companies, and Ed McLaughlin mentioned this, that one of the things that Amazon tries to do and Walmart is get a subscription service. Every month they send you something. They know what you normally use. You know that every month you need onions. You know that every month you need this or you need that. No sense to key it in every week. No sense to wonder about it. No sense to keep track of your inventory in the house. They'll do that for you. And what a good deal. As a matter of fact, on these TV shows, having you agree to getting automatic refills, they will give you the first order for free if you say, yes, I'll take the regular amount. Who else is selling food? How about Albert Heinz? In an airport. This is a picture I took coming in from the airport. I thought, that's funny. That looks like a supermarket. Now, why would you do that? Why would you put a supermarket in an airport? Because many of the people that travel, many of the people that are coming home, they get off the plane and they say, damn, I've got to make a stop at the supermarket in order to get some food for tonight. Except they don't have to. They get off the plane. It saves them a trip. It saves them a trip by being able to go into the supermarket and buy the food right at the airport. By the way, I was kind of interested. Look at all the people in there. Apparently it's working well, but I think one of the things we're going to see more and more of as technology develops, there's going to be a lot more vending. A lot more vending. And you know, the food industry took a page out of the book of banks. Now, banks are usually the last group to innovate anything. But in this case, they came up with these ATMs. And they said, 90% of the people just need some cash. Why don't we figure out a system that 24/7 they can get cash? That's what the supermarkets are doing. I mean, this is, look, self-service supermarket. Fruits and veggies. This is a way of focusing on having multi-temperature units, putting them in place. A lot of the grocery stores are putting them in the vestibule of the supermarket so that you can go and stop and you go in the vestibule, but they don't have to keep their store open for 24 hours. They did discover, by the way, they keep track of what's bought. Baby diapers and beer are the two major things. Here, by the way, is something from China called Bingo Box. It's only been in this place for about a few weeks, but it's been selling product like crazy. No one works there. No one works there. You just walk in, and everything is done on with your credit card, etc. Ed, by the way, talked about something that Amazon is working on in the city of, I think, Seattle. But you get an app for your phone. You go into the store, you turn on the app, you just walk, put everything you want in the basket, and leave. There's no cashiers. And it's not RFID, it's working off your phone. It's amazing. Can you imagine think about a store in the future? Number one, reducing the labor costs significantly. Number two, reducing the time. I saw a study, it was a little while ago, but the study said people spend as much time waiting to pay as they do to buy the food. Yep. Imagine if you could get that out of the system. Again, it's not just food. All sorts of people are using vending. I promise you, you will see more vending. How about these paper supply stores? They figured out this, that years ago, if you wanted to have coffee and candy and things of this nature in the office, someone from the office would go to the grocery store, buy this stuff, use petty cash, and come back. You don't have to do it anymore. So, at least in our school, when we place our order for paper and pencils, we buy the coffee, we buy paper products, we buy candy. I'm evidence that we buy candy. Right at the store. And guess what? People aren't acting price sensitive in that situation. When I looked and walked through, they had about 40 coffee items in a staple store, in a stationery store. Now, I know that some people would say, yeah, but they don't have fresh product. Well, I'll tell you what, about 8 years ago, when I was doing a project for the dollar stores, people said, yeah, but they don't have fresh product. They do now. It's not that difficult to move from selling food to selling bananas, to selling apples, Jim Allen, to having bag salad. You see, it sneaks up on you. It's not like someone says, open the store and have so many square feet of refrigerated or produce. You just keep adding a little bit. And this is what happens. Same thing happens with the pharmacies, with the dollar stores. They didn't start by saying, fill the place with all of this stuff. It will happen. It will happen because people buy produce. It'll happen because people want produce. And it will happen because people are going into these stores and they're going to find the products that they want. Now, what I didn't talk much about was the whole e-commerce thing, and that's the elephant in the room as far as I'm concerned. It's the topic that a lot of people don't speak of. But look at the influence of e-commerce. Now, there's two types that we have to keep in mind. One is the outright purchase, but probably more important in the food industry is this digital influenced. That is, before you buy something, you look it up online. Before you buy something, you look at where you can get it cheaper. Before you buy something, you're online looking. That's why I've talked to a number of people, especially the produce industry does not have the best websites, I'll tell you that. And people say, well, I'm not going to sell mushrooms to people online. That's not what they're looking for. People go to the website to know what your business is like, how you do it, what you do it. You've heard other people say that people are interested in organic. People are interested in no pesticides. You can talk about this stuff. You can brag a little bit when you have these online. And that's this digital influence. And that's growing even faster than the actual sales. The online websites and information, it's like having a salesperson sitting next to your potential customer. You're there talking to that customer, giving them a reason to buy, not necessarily selling. Now, we talked about this, and I like to show these because it's actually happening. It's not like a Star Trek thing, It's not this kind of crazy stuff. People are actually doing this. You're waiting for a bus or a train or something, and you can buy these products. Let me look. What don't you see on that list? Produce. And this is where I think the industry has to take a new look. Just as consumers are looking for fresh food, we have to be looking for fresh solutions. We just can't keep on doing the same thing. Here's another shot. Amazon Fresh, the whole phenomena taking place with Amazon buying Whole Food is truly disruptive. There's figures that show what happened to the traditional publicly traded supermarkets the day after this sale, even less actually. I saw figures like 1 hour after the sale, the price of the public traded stock just dropped because they knew that this was going to be something different. And if you know the actions that Bezos has taken in the past, he's going to make this into a big business. He is prepared to take significant losses for an extended period of time. It's one of the advantages of being the richest person in the world, or second richest, whatever it is. A major issue is also getting the food. And a lot of companies are now, and I like Tesco, you don't have to have it delivered. What you can do, you send it to a click and collect. They have these spots all over, mostly England, where you tell them when you're going to drop by to pick up your order, and guess what? It's generally there. And you just pull in, people put the order in the car, you go to click and collect. We've got to make sure that we're part of this system. I mean, look at this, there's 300 locations in England now to have this form of Amazon Fresh pickup. So you don't actually have to go and call and have it delivered, because sometimes that's not convenient to know when they're going to be there. This is a Amazon Fresh pickup spot. Tell them when you're going to be there and your product will be there. Again, by the way, look at here's the thing. We used to keep building, we still are in the US, building big supermarkets. Some of them have 60,000 items. 60,000. Amazon has more than 500,000 food items. 500,000, many of them fresh, many of them local. I mean, it's totally changing the logic. You can get pretty much anything you want. I just wanted to say we have the same phenomena in England, where we have all sorts of different e-commerce choices in England. In Europe, it's actually far ahead of the US. Grocery orders in England make up 5% of the total. France, 2.5%. Germany lags behind almost everyone with 1%. France has been using the, click and collect. The big thing in the U.S. is Lidl and what we call limited assortment supermarkets. But the limited assortment supermarkets are really becoming much better marketers. The vision that a lot of people have is kind of the dirty store, not too many items, no branded items, and that is changing, at least with Aldi. Aldi is just growing like crazy in the U.S. But here's my favorite. I am a baseball fan. I love baseball. Most non-Americans, except for maybe Japan, don't understand baseball. It seems like the most boring game they've ever seen. But look, I could order a beer and a hot dog sitting in my seat. Talk about convenience. But let's look. So what are these short? It's changing. Retail is clearly changing. But what are some of the short-term changes? Fresh is foremost. Now again, I think that's good news for this industry. Fresh is foremost. People want fresh food. But the experience must be excellent. We have traded off the retail experience to make everything convenient for the distributor and for the retailer. We have to make it a fun, interesting experience. If we don't, those millennials are just going to go online. We have to give them a reason to go into the store. One of the real successes of Costco is it's kind of fun to be there. A little bit of a treasure hunt. You never know exactly what's going to be on sale. and they have people sampling everything. You always shop at Costco on an empty stomach because they're going to have a lot of food. Everyone has talked around here, talked about a focus on healthy. Healthy consumer means healthy profits. We have to focus on really emphasizing the role that produce has in a healthy diet. And the dilemma is, for the most part, our in-store marketing stinks. Think about it. You walk up to, for example, asparagus, and you have a sign, and what does the sign say? Asparagus. The only thing I know one thing, what it is, and that's what they tell us. And then they tell us the price. All the wonderful things you could say about it. You could talk about freshness. You could talk about taste. You could talk about tons of things. And what do we say? It's asparagus. We have to keep focusing on making it easier. We have to have our supermarkets understand that people want convenience, they want it simple, and they want it fast and easy. And you're seeing this grow. I thought I had some slides, but I don't have all of, let me see if I do. Making a store an excellent experience. That to me looks exciting. That to me gives me the feeling that it's fresh, that it's experiential. My mother wouldn't like this, by the way. I understand that. These things aren't for everybody. But we do have, this is what I wanted to come to, we do have a health halo, and we have to help consumers understand exactly what you're getting from these fresh fruits and vegetables. By the way, I always tell people, you know what you have to do to, what you need to get a American Heart Association recommendation? About $100,000. But this is the focus. One of our big advantages is I don't think there's a bit of fresh produce that can't make some claim about healthy. And that's what we have to do. That's the direction of almost all these people. Convenience is essential, and the industry's done it a little bit. You know, remember we had a lettuce, and then we had like bag romaine, and then we went to kits, and then we went to, and we saw this continual slow change towards convenience. By the way, who was the biggest obstacle here? The retailers. The retailers so focused, so myopic about price, is that say, who would ever pay twice as much for half the amount of product? Everybody that didn't have time to wash their lettuce, cut up their lettuce, or those people that didn't want half of that head of lettuce to go bad because they couldn't eat the entire amount. A really important thing is merchandising. Think about, at least in the US, we love to have baked potatoes. And a lot of people with their baked potatoes, they put some sour cream, chives, maybe bacon bit, all sorts of things we put in a baked potato. Think about how much you have to walk around the supermarket to get all those ingredients. One retailer, actually a friend of mine, put a little cooler next to the baked potatoes, and guess what he had in it? Sour cream and butter and chives and bacon bits, all of those things. I asked him how it worked, how was it doing? He said, I really can't tell because, you know, if I sell butter in this little case, it rings up exactly as if it was butter from the dairy section. So I really can't tell. He says, but I do have to fill it twice a day. I mean, make it easier for consumers and for yourself, because remember, a lot of people may not buy those things. I love this. This is Hy-Vee, a wonderful supermarket chain in the Iowa area. Shortcuts. All these are partially prepared, partially prepared. And this is partially prepared is important, because what that does is it lets those cooks be able to say, look at what I made for you tonight, darling. They made dinner for their loved one. When you just take something that's already made, and I mean, if you buy a rotisserie chicken at the grocery store, you lose the right to say, look at what I made for you. This is permitting people to feel good about themselves, besides helping them time-wise. Here's a section, look, all of these things. I'm sorry this did not turn out as well as I thought, but you know what these are? These are the ingredients that you might, if no matter what you're making, it's cut up onions and cut up celery and peppers, etc. I learned this lesson when I was doing focus groups, and I was asking, people were talking, and the one lady said, I would like to cook like Emerald. And I said, man, a celebrity chef, Emerald Lagasse. I said, ma'am, we would all like to cook like Emerald. She said, no, you don't know what I mean. He walks on the stage and says, take a cup of chopped onions, and there it is. I mean, she said, that's the way I want my produce company to be my sous chef. They be the one that says, put this in. We take for granted a lot of our products. Consumers are looking for new. They want to have something new. By the way, not only in food, in all areas. New is a major marketing word. Consumers also are fickle. They like this for a while, then they like this for a while, especially health-wise. Oh, I got to get more vitamin B. I got to get more vitamin D. I don't need more vitamin. I need vitamin C now. They jump around, and one of the things we have to do is look for new varieties. Look for ways of transforming our product, like cauliflower rice, things of that nature. New is significant. Unfortunately, new is not new. People have been searching for new for many, many years. The two long-term changes are going to be alternatives to supermarkets. I think if the supermarket industry doesn't make some major changes, there's going to be really virtually no, except for major players, the supermarket industry will disappear. Now, people say to me, oh, come on, John, you think the supermarket industry is going to, as we know it? If they don't make these changes, they will. And it happened in the U.S. with pharmacies. We used to have loads of little, mom and pop pharmacies. They do not exist anymore. And if I had 20 years ago said, all these mom and pop pharmacies are going to be gone, people would say, John, come on. They're not going to be gone. Now they're CVS. The second big change is consumers are demanding more convenience, and what they've told us so far is they'll pay for it. That they will pay for it. That we have to look at every conceivable way to make things easier. I love Brussels sprouts. And what I normally do is cut them in half, parboil them, and then put them on a fry pan with butter and char the bottom. I know it's a small thing, but I don't have to cut them anymore. My supermarket sells halved Brussels sprouts. It saves me 10 minutes. That's 10 minutes I can do something else. Oh, here's what happened when the Amazon, I thought I had this here. Look at that. The day that they bought it, Supervalu's down. Kroger, the largest supermarket chain, if not one or two, lost 14%. What hasn't changed is the way the produce industry promotes. It's almost archaic. We've promoted it because we've always thought of our products for the most part as commodities, and the lowest price gets the win. Well, I will say there's no such thing as a commodity product. There's only commodity marketers, people that have failed to see the advantage that their products have. We have to look more to the way Campbell Soups promotes their product, the way Procter & Gamble promotes their product. We have to stop just filling shelves, telling consumers the only thing they knew, what the product is. But take a look at the value. Of all the pre-cut products, none had a bigger markup than onions. 392% if you just cut them up. You see, one of the things people say when they think they're in a commodity business is they say, we don't have the margin of Campbell's. Or, yeah, you don't, because you give away the margin back to the consumers. Cut it up. Look at the 317% markup on kale that has been washed and trimmed. One of the hottest selling produce items in the U.S. There's margin there. We just have to take it. Conclusion, the produce industry, to be in this new world, to deal with all these changes, has to think anew and act anew. The way we did things in the past may have been successful, but they are not necessarily going to be successful in the future. We need to be ready to sell anywhere, anytime. We have to figure out how we do this to be successful. It's a new world, and it'll continue to change, only faster than before. If you're selling primarily only to supermarkets and you see all of these little changes taking place and you say there's not enough volume there, you've put all your eggs in one basket. And I want to close with this one slide. It's Charles Darwin. And a lot of people think that Charles Darwin said, only the strong survive. He didn't say that. He said, in the struggle for survival, the fittest win out at the expense of their rivals because they succeed in adapting themselves best to their environment. That's the key. For us to adapt as the world is changing, not continually fight to do it the old way and get these people to use our product. I want to thank you very much for your time. Thank you.